Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of This is Coaching. I am one of the hosts, Marquise Navarro. Today, I'm joined by Nicolette Moore, uh, Monica Riva, and then our special guest, Shawn Carpenter. For those of you just joining us, we are a show dedicated to teaching folks what coaching is, what coaching can be, and what coaching is not. That's pretty much what we do in a nutshell. And today, I'm very happy to have this gentleman on the show because we've known each other, oh my gosh, since what, 2007, 2006.
Yeah, around there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, both of us were into the combative sports, and I'll never forget his kicks. That he's one of the hardest kicking men I've ever met in my life.
Thank you.
And I kick pretty hard myself, so he
You
scared
do. I
me.
remember.
So,
We
yeah,
had fun.
never forget that. But my good friend Sean here, he's an amazing coach. And matter of fact, I got the one of the ideas of coaching from him um, and his family, and watching them over the years. It's definitely awesome and an honor to have you on the show. Welcome.
Mhm.
If you wouldn't mind telling everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, totally. So first off, Marquis, like, thank you for having me. I really mean that. I'm honored to be here. As we were talking about just before we started, a year ago, going through a rough time myself, and you kind of helped me get through it, and it's led to, it actually was one of the tipping points that led to getting back on track to where I am now, right?
Awesome.
But basically, I mean, I've been coaching for, oh, I don't know, about over a decade, I would think, somewhere around there. I had no intention of getting into coaching. Um, didn't even really understand the industry. I actually remember. So I used to have if you remember, a full time gym. My wife and I, and we ran that for about a decade. And at one point, I don't know, we expanded from like a 1,400 square foot location to like a 10,000 square foot location, like just beautiful, right? And so having live fight shows, all this, the raw foods restaurant in there, and instructor college, like all these really cool things, right? And I've always been into personal development, um, spirituality, things like this, and really psychology, really looking at how to develop as a human being. And so we did run some personal development programs in there. That's probably what planted the seed towards what I'm doing now, right? But at one point, so we had expanded right at the start of 2008. I don't remember, the big crash. I'm sure everybody does, 2008. And we
Yeah.
we we actually did really good for about 6 months. We were doing fine. We're like, wow, everyone's so affected around us, but we're actually doing really good. And then almost overnight, people started, literally. I had people leave to go back east to find work, so they couldn't train anywhere. They couldn't afford it, right? And so we struggled for a couple of years. Finally, had to. We actually ended up losing everything. We had to close down. We lost the gym, home, car, etc. That was pretty. We had 3 kids. It was pretty tough time to go through. Um, in many ways, it took this long to actually recover from it in a lot of ways, right? And but it's kind of like the first few months, feeling not sure what to do. And then I got an invitation from Bob Proctor to become a coach. I was like, well, okay, that might as well, let's explore it, something different, right? Similar to what I've known. Actually, I remember when we had the gym. Um, there's a coach that we started working with a little bit, but when he first approached us and talked about life coaching, I was like, my first response was, why do I need a coach to live my life? Like, that's ridiculous, right? I had no idea, right? And obviously, that my thought changed on that. But anyway, so Bob Proctor invited me. I became a coach, started working with people, and wonderful, coaching program, wonderful man. Um, but I knew that there was just something different, a little bit different I was looking for. And I've always known about Tony Robbins. So even though I was really hesitant about the life coaching thing, I thought, oh, okay, great. He's a motivational speaker is what my thinking, right? And so anyway, I ended up taking some programs with him, and that's basically been a lot of the training actually I've gone through, worked with them in person, along with other psychology courses, mindfulness programs, things like that. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
Awesome. It's a very long journey, and I do remember, like I said, I've been not stalking you, but watching on Facebook, seeing
Totally.
posts
Yeah.
and updates over the years, and watching where you were and where you are now is amazing.
Hmm. Thank
And
you.
like very insightful. So he posts some very it's makes you think just by reading it. He's a fabulous writer, obviously,
Thank
great
you.
coach and an artist. But we can get into that another time. So let's get into the type of coaching that you do. Like, well, how would you describe your coaching?
Good question. I've thought about this lots over the years, how I describe it, and I've kind of changed it at different times. Presently, and where I guess you could say in terms of coaching, where I'm passionate is it's all about transformation. A lot of coaching is you have a business coach or a life coach. I'm kind of both and neither. I also use a lot of psychological models, like say mindfulness models, all these methodologies that come together, right? And in a nutshell, if I go back to actually answer the question, it's about transformation.
Okay.
It's about breakthroughs and transformation. Like I've worked with people like multimillionaires. I've worked with people that are struggling, a whole range of clientele, people with depression, anxiety, a lot of that actually. People that have been in therapy for years and they come to me because they've gotten so far, but they feel like, okay, there's just something more. I don't really feel like I've overcome this yet, right? Not that we ever really truly overcome it, I don't think, but we can certainly have a significant change in our life. And so, really, where I really like to work with people is again, like goal, setting goals, achieving goals, all that's important, but it's actually secondary. What I
Mm.
really believe it's about who you are and who you become as a person, right? So ultimately, it's about shedding all the conditioning, that we've learned through our lifetime. Go to the core of who we are, what I call the authentic self, and becoming and expressing that in the world. So for instance, I'll give you an example, even just my own life, like having coached for so long, I was quite successful, did quite well with it, worked with some very, very high class people. But I felt like I had to put on this mask or this presentation of
Mm.
being a successful coach,
Mm.
right? And then a couple of years ago, my wife and I separated, and that was, as you know, Marquise, and it was actually, years in the making, and she's a coach as well, and today we have a great friendship, but it was because I hadn't really applied what I do with people at the deepest levels,
Mm.
right? So I was wearing this mask, I had this facade, and kind of not exactly this, but kind of like the imposter syndrome that most new coaches face, that I faced years ago. I'd kind of gotten past that, but a similar version or a similar pattern to that. And so anyway, the separation kind of forced me to go that much deeper, to really go, through the unconscious layers or not, I can't say I've arrived somewhere. That's what I mean, but a lot of unconscious layers, patterns, etc., to tap into who I really am, and that's actually where what started to improve my relationship with my wife. And we talk every day. We see each other almost every day, right? Which is really cool. And that's the kind of work I do with people. Long-winded answer, sorry, but it's the transformation, right? That's most important to me.
For the record, I really like long answers. It gives
Okay,
me,
cool.
yeah, gives me something
True
to
enough.
chew on and think about, and it brings up questions like this question here. So I know you are really big into like actual psychology and not really the clinical, but the academic
Yeah.
portions. And my question is like, how easy or would you recommend other coaches to really delve into the psychological sides of coaching? Because there's a fine line between therapy and coaching. We all know
Yep.
that as
Absolutely.
coaches.
Yeah.
We're not therapists,
No.
and therapists aren't coaches.
Exactly.
But if they have knowledge of both, like paint that picture. Like why should we do that?
That's a good question. I can answer it in a couple ways. I've seen some people with not a lot of training that are naturally very effective as coaches. They just know how to really listen to people and present possibilities. Right? And I've seen a lot of people that have a lot of training that really aren't that effective. Even counselors and therapists and whatnot. Again, I
Mm.
know some amazing people in all these modalities, right? Um, and I've seen people. Some of the worst advice. I don't think I should repeat it, but it's that I've ever seen come from a counselor, and it ended up leading to a divorce for the couple,
Mm.
right? And I was like mind blown when I heard it, like this kind of stuff. So going back to your question, a lot of coaches take like a weekend course or a week-long course, and like, okay, now I can coach. Now I'm a life coach.
Right.
To me, and again, nothing against that. If that's your path, that's cool. For me personally, I feel like, well, looking at the martial arts, like, would I, would I recommend fighting after 6 months of training? No. Right. I mean, maybe if you're supernaturally talented, but even that's such a small amount of time. Right. For most of us, it took a long time to get really good at what we were doing before we stepped into the ring. Right. Yeah. Or if you go to university, would it make sense to have your PhD after 1 year? It's impossible, right? It wouldn't make sense. So to me, to become a truly effective coach, I guess it depends what you want, but I really believe that you need the proper education behind you, right? Whether you go to university or whether there's the right kinds of, there's so many cool courses out there that are very, very in depth, that'll give you a lot of wonderful information. I'm actually doing one right now on, actually two, on working more with trauma, which I'm really good at anyway, but again, expanding that horizon. So
there's always more to learn.
Oh, always more to learn.
Yeah.
Always, right? And then it's taking what we learn and applying that. So in my personal opinion, I think it's very limited, depending on what you want to do. If you're just a coach, and equally it's kind of limited depending on what you want to do if you're just a therapist. So you bring both types of modalities together and you create a lot of change. Again, I think it depends on what you want for your clients, what kind of clients you want to work with.
So what kind of clients do you work with?
Good question. Professionals, number one. It's I mean, sometimes it'll be a professional and their partner and their spouse, for instance, if the spouse doesn't work, but usually both do. In my experience, working the people that come to me, but it's all people that they've achieved usually a level of success to some degree, at least from at least a level of comfort, and they know they're capable of more and want more, but they don't know how to get there. They don't know what that looks like. So that's one possibility, or one range of people. And it's usually career-wise, but just life-wise. So one pocket is the career and just reaching potential. Another area is people that are struggling in their relationship. So either you reach a plateau and they just, because of what I've been through and what I've been taught, but either they've reached a plateau and they want more, or it's not going very well and they're worried about it getting worse, or it's on the edge of separation, divorce, and they really need to make a change now, right? So that's kind of the second area that I work with. And the third area is people that really are very self-aware, but are struggling with like depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, low self-worth, low self-confidence, etc. And they've maybe quite often done a lot of therapy in the past, or counseling, or other coaching, and then they come to me and say, okay, I've done all this work, I've gotten this far, and that's awesome. Now I'm ready to go a little bit deeper. What do I need to do? How do I need to, where can I go with this, right? And whether maybe they're still on medication, for instance, things like that, and they work with me, and they experience, again, not because I'm somebody special, but because of what I've been through and what I've learned. They experience this dramatic and profound transformation, where I've even had people then go back to their therapist and they're able to wean themselves off medication because of the transformation they've gone through, right? And it's pretty cool. So it's really about that overcoming what holds us back and realizing our truest potential or calling or what God or life wants from us, you could say. That's the kind of people that I work with. So people that are willing to really, they don't want the easiest route necessarily. all my testimonials, I'll say things like, he's not easy to work with, right? And it's not that I'm really harsh with people, is that I stretch them. I push them to face when they're ready. Obviously, you have to be ready. So how I work with one person is very different than somebody else. But I'm always going to push people to just stretch a little bit in their beliefs, in their emotional patterns, their behavioral patterns. So it's just like martial art training, right? So you're always pushing just a little bit more to see what you're really capable of. That's what I look for. Men, women, doesn't matter. I actually work with about 70% women, to be honest.
Not surprising, actually.
Thank you.
I like to go really deep and personal. Mm-hmm. So I hope you don't mind, because I don't like surface level conversation. I like going deep.
Yeah.
It's the coach in me, I guess. But I'm curious, you you gave a brief summary of your history, and I'm thinking of Shawn Carpenter, 2008, has this booming business and it just goes, and then he goes into coaching. Mm-hmm. And I want to know, like, I want to understand what was happening in your mind and your heart, what kind of thought processes you had, because for anybody who's listening right now, we're in COVID, right? Mm-hmm. How many people right now are going through a situation where they've lost work, they've lost business, they've lost their jobs. You know, how many martial arts studios have been put under during this time, right? Like,
no, it's true.
That's it's a real issue right now. And though not everybody is going to go into coaching, that the idea that you can transform your life, and the idea that just because this bad thing happened doesn't mean it's the end, doesn't mean that potential has been lost to you. You know, I would like to see in Shawn Carpenter's mind, in your heart, in your recollection, how did you find hope through this new path?
Good question. I can answer it kind of in a couple ways if I can. And I love that you like to go deep. I'm not about surface conversation at all. You know, Marquise knows that really well. I mean, sometimes we'll talk about whatever, but I like to be very real. And deep, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things, so I can answer it in a couple ways. I've struggled with depression and anxiety for most of my life, right? And, I did a certain amount of work on them in my younger years, in the earlier years of our marriage, and certainly did a lot of workshops, some counseling, things like that. And it helped to a degree. I was always I was always working on myself. So I was always willing to look at certain things. But what I found was, and this is true, I think, for a lot of us, is that I did it to a certain point where it felt like I was comfortable enough stretching, but not at the really deep wounded parts. So I didn't go deep enough, right? Because it's scary and it's hard, to be honest, right? Because we're like, what are we going to find if we look at all this stuff, right? And so coming back to your question, so I struggled with all this. Now I was always very confident, I've no problem there. Confidence, self-esteem. So it's this weird kind of mix that I was dealing with, right? And that's actually what caused a lot of problems in our marriage too, was just the fact that I would sink into these patterns of depression, of self-loathing, even though other times I'd have true confidence, not just arrogance, but a real confidence in my abilities, right, in myself. And just this dynamic caused a lot of problems. And when it came to the business, it translated that way too. So how I handled certain situations wasn't the best. Right. Even though I had a lot of people that you say, oh yeah, even coming today, like people saying how much it changed their lives being a student, for instance. Right. But like I said, I had all this mix of results because of it. And so one thing led to another. And aside from the crash of 08, had I known what I know now, could I have survived it? Absolutely 1000%. Yes. I would have approached it very differently. Right. That said, I might not be coaching if I'd done that, so who knows exactly where I'd be. But I was devastated when I lost the gym. And that's the honest truth. It was like the biggest blow. It was like a almost a daily punch in the gut feeling. Cause I also lost my reputation. Like we had, I don't know if you remember, but we had all kinds of horrible, I think I shared something with you, Marquise, but horrible comments that said, right. Some, with some truth in them, and a lot not. There was this whole mix. And that was kind of like a rock bottom for me, like devastated, punch in the gut feeling daily, anxiety over money, all kinds of things. Like it was really, really horrible. It's probably the lowest point of my life, really. And what gave me the hope, I think, was kind of a couple of things. Number one was I still had a piece of determination because I had 3 kids and my wife to support. So there was a part of me that just knew I had to find a way, even though I went through suicidal ideation at points too, right? But a part of me just said, you know what? No, I have to find a way, right? So there was that. But there's also, I've always been, you could say, very spiritually minded. If anything, Buddhist maybe, but I'm Métis, so I do a lot of my First Nations ancestry, the ceremony, the culture. We live all that too. And so I kind of have a wide perspective on that, and that gave a lot of hope as well. Right? Having something to draw on, non-duality as well. That's really what it comes down to, which is mindfulness is part of that. And I think that I can't say it's a belief, but just a feeling of connection with something greater than what I was going through. Right. And I think that connection, ultimately, it's a connection in ourselves. You know, it's kind of like how Jesus said the kingdom of God is within. Right. Or the Buddha said, well, how did he put it? He said, no one can save you and no one may. It's up to you to work out your own salvation. And that particular piece is so important. Or like a Zen saying, sorry, I'm reminded of always Satan suddenly, but the Zen saying of move and the way will appear.
I love that.
There's all these pieces that kind of kept that just like a spark of hope, even my most biggest moments of despair, but a spark of hope that just kept me going. Right. And then finally applying what I've learned. And that's a daily practice, really. It's constantly applying.
I would say there's a lot to take away from everything you just said, but
cool.
I noticed that it went from the kind of the self-loathing to it's not about me. And I like that, because most people don't take everybody else into consideration when they're going through their own, for lack of a better term, shit.
Totally. Yeah.
They just consume themselves with themselves, and they don't look outside. And I think that is a big part. A lot of folks don't realize that you personally, we all affect other people, and because people truly care about us, and when we're not in the right place, they're not in the right place.
Absolutely.
I think that's also very important to talk about, and that could be a completely different show, to be honest with you. But no, I like that a lot, and it makes sense, very much so. No, thank you for sharing all of that. Honestly,
you're welcome. It's one thing. Sorry, go ahead.
I could ask a million questions. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the things, like I said, was this idea that I had to present this super successful coach for so many years, right? I kept all those parts hidden from people. The story of the losing, it's a good story, so I would share that of losing the gym, right? But the rest of it, the depression, the anxiety, I would hide that from people. Partly out of shame, partly out of feeling like, well, if they knew, they would never work with me, right? And when I finally came to grasp, or came to really take responsibility and own those parts of me and really look at them, I had no problem sharing. And as the moment I started to open up that way is the moment it everything changed. And it's actually been very, very recent. That's where it's just, instead of just taking on anyone, it's like I get referral after referral after referral for like the ideal client for the most part. And they come to me and they have, quite often are more successful than I am, but they still could use the help. We all need that help and that support and that guidance, right? And it's just like this weight gets lifted when you can truly be, I don't think it's like an arrival point. I think it's a process, really, but this weight gets lifted where you can just be more of your authentic self, more and more and more and more of that, and not worry about what other people think. And it's easier said than done. Like, it'll still come up sometimes, certainly, right? But to actually be, experience times of being free of that is just, it makes things so much easier, right?
This is a conversation that many people, probably 99.99% of humans, deal with. And I think that it's really important to identify and talk about maybe ad nauseum, because here's the thing. If I came to you, Shawn, and you were a coach that exuded confidence and you just had all your shisa together, I might walk away always feeling like I could never get there. Even no matter how awesome your coaching is, I could never get there because I'm so, for me, I'm just talking for me, I'm so emotional. I'm just like, I'm a hot mess all the time. Yeah. Right. And so I the clients that I work with, I'm always telling them, be as authentic, like just tell people how you feel. Just
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
it's so much better to work with a human who acknowledges their human emotion and their like, and is willing to say, you know, I've had a really bad day. I can't wait to coach you. I know it's going to make me feel better and it's going to do worlds of wonder for you, but I just want you to know I'm coming. I'm just feeling a little achy right now, but
Exactly.
let's get into it, you know, and it
Exactly.
just makes it more real.
It does.
And so I think I'm grateful to hear that you've kind of gotten to that place and that you see the fruit of that. And I think it's something to acknowledge and say, awesome, 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 because you're serving your client so much more powerfully now that you're willing to say, I'm just a human guy who wants to help you, but
Exactly.
I got my funk too.
Yeah, it's so true. It makes it way more relatable, right? And I think it makes it a little bit. Now, some people are not at that. You know, I'm thinking of some people. It's very rarely that I don't have somebody choose to work with me now, but some people just aren't maybe ready to face that. Um, or there's more like, oh no, I just I just want to need to know how to make you know 10 million this year. That's all I want, right? And that's cool. But I like what Tony Robbins said. This was years ago. He said it to us in one of the coaching calls. He said, "Success without fulfillment is still failure." And I
Yeah.
really, really believe that. I've seen it over and over again. Like I had a client who he came with. I have a lot of people like this, but this guy just popped in my head. He came to me because he wanted to be a world class leader. He was I work a lot of realtors and managing brokers and so forth as well. They tend to refer each other, and other coaches actually, a lot of other coaches too. And so he came to me because he wanted to be this world class leader. Now it's a pretty generalized goal, right? What does that mean, right? And he didn't even really know. And I said, okay, cool, let's find out, right? He was somebody who he could set a goal, accomplish it, set a goal, accomplish it, set a goal, accomplish it. So he didn't need my help there. That was easy, right? And within a few, he worked with me as most people do. He worked with me for about, oh, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. Most people it's 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Like it tends to be a long time. And I remember, about 3, 4 months into it, somewhere around there, he started to realize, there's a reason that I accomplished my goals so quickly. And it's not actually the most glamorous reason. He said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said, I accomplished these goals because I'm trying to prove that I'm worthy enough.
Mm.
So he realized with my help that even though, again, super confident on the outside, you never know, right? Confident, charismatic, et cetera, successful. I already made 6 figures, so that wasn't an issue, right? But inwardly, he felt unworthy. And so we started working really deeply on that, right? That was the big piece. And as he healed and integrated the parts that felt unworthy, the deeply unconscious parts, these I think in our psyche, my experience and what I've been taught, we have all these fractured parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Quite often from childhood, different points where we create a belief, we experience trauma, and whatever things got lodged in there. And I don't think we need to address them all necessarily one by one, but we have to address very key points. And so we started to do that, child work, etc. And as he started to feel worthy, things just started coming to him. So he started making connections like around the world, right? Started opening new businesses, things like this. And it was really, really cool to see. So he became that world-class leader, figured out what it was once he felt worthy. Right. So that's a big piece. I kind of went off topic there.
It's easy to do. It's so easy to do.
Can't remember where I was going with that. There was a reason I shared that story.
We like off topic though.
Okay. Well, I'm glad because that's kind of how I work sometimes.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that story, like not really recognizing what it is you're after. Like we have this conversation over coaching a lot. We start a coaching relationship with somebody and they bring this thing to us that we're supposed to help them with. It turns out to be something completely different.
Yes.
That we end up working on. And through that, I will say that oftentimes we end up having our own revelations as coaches,
Mhm.
working them through theirs. And that's the fun part. So one thing that I will say that most coaches have in common, that if they're worth their, salt, they have that self-awareness of knowing they're not perfect, which is,
Yes.
Mhm.
and they recognize that, like you said, you don't have to be perfect, and that being relatable and giving them a sense of relief, because
Mhm.
now that client knows, oh, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Like that is huge. I know, like, yeah. So definitely like spot on with that. And I guarantee that's why you are as successful as you are is,
Mhm.
well, one, I mean, you're very easy to talk to,
Thanks.
like honestly, and you're very insightful and you're very, good about reading people and
Mhm.
asking those deep questions, um, even if it isn't uncomfortable, right? Like you're gonna
Mhm.
bring that out of them,
Totally.
and it's very, that's a skill. Like that's a masterful skill to be able to
Thank
do.
you.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Well,
so
Well, I was going to say, I have something I'd love to like kind of hyper focus in on,
sure.
if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You had made this comment about you've got clients you've worked with for 4 or 5 years. I think this is such a great thing to bring up because many listeners, the whole point of the show is to introduce coaching to people who really may not know about coaching.
Mhm.
So thinking about before you knew anything about coaching, there might be people who wonder, how long would I work with a coach? Is a coaching a one-off kind of conversation? Is it a relationship? What does that look like?
Mhm.
And I'd love to kind of have like a little, maybe this is a great way to kind of wrap this
Sure.
because I have had plenty of coaches and I've had the experience of one-off coaching versus long-term coaching. And I kind of look at it like dating in a sense. There is a sense of you try somebody out, and if they don't align with you, you got to get out of there. It's not good for either of you. But then there's also that the long-term benefit, the patterns that are brought up and noticed,
Mhm.
the hard conversations that can really only be had as you create that long-term bond
Mhm.
with your coach and the sacred nature of that relationship. And so I'm so glad you offhandedly said it as if everybody, like could understand that. And we can, but just people don't understand coaching. They don't
For
understand
sure.
what is it on the inside. What is that sacred relationship?
Mhm.
And so I'd love to get like everybody's input here about the nature of the length of relationships with the coach, what to look for. Those kind of things are really important to talk about.
Totally. I think there's so many different styles of coaching. For me, it's really because it's about transformation. It's really about a long-term relationship as
Mhm.
much as possible. Um, I think a one-off coaching session can work wonders for people. If that's like I've seen some big transformation in a single session, massive breakthroughs in a single session. Um, you know, some people, two coaches that I do some writing for, they work very different modalities than myself. It's more about breath work and that sort of thing. And they end up, they have much shorter packages than I do. They do one-off sessions and things like that. I don't. Um, I'll do, kind of I like to work with a initial, what I call a discovery session. It's just about,
Mhm.
and I just do this for free for people, just to find out, create some change right then and there, something they can use in that first hour that they can use to propel whatever change they want. But more, it's about finding the right fit.
Mhm.
And I feel like if it's the right fit, like you're saying, you can kind of go deeper and deeper. And sometimes it's very quick. Like I've had people be very like highly emotional, experience big transformation on day one, right?
Mhm.
Other people, they're much more guarded, so it takes a little bit more time to get there. But I think for all of us, unless you're someone like Jesus or the Buddha or somebody like that, I think we all have stuff to work on, right?
Yeah.
And and ultimately, so it's I like Jeff Foster. He's a non-dual teacher, but he's a fantastic poet. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he is a great poem he wrote recently, actually, and he has several like this, but it's called Shit Warriors. And it's kind of, yeah, the essence of it is kind of saying, instead of trying to be this, you know, super successful, or in this case, you know, super spiritual being that has it all together, if you're feeling shitty, feel that way, right? Learn to be real with it, right? And so, you know, I think it's going back to what you said, it's just being able to go deeper and deeper. And I find that people, like, I've had some awesome testimonials after 3 months, you know, very short term, but then they continue for another 6 months or a year, or, you know, I just keep going and going, because we always find that there's better results, number one, but more importantly, there's more transformation we can go through, deeper and truer parts. Where, like, I have a lady that's been with me since now 2014, and she's now doing some of the biggest healing work that we've done in that time. You know, really coming to those core wounds and really revealing them and and working with them to heal and integrate them, right? And she's had amazing, like, even her first year with me, she had amazing, that's when she gave her first testimonial, like, amazing results business wise, you know, in particular, but pattern wise, etc. Now it's just going deeper and deeper and saying, wow, this is what's here. Sorry, my email just popped up randomly there. So for me, going back to that question, it's about developing a relationship. You know, I think that's where the best transformation can happen. That safety, that connection. You know, because I think we all require that to be able to go to the deepest levels possible. Without that feeling of safety.
Alone, right?
What's that?
You cannot go there alone. It's hard to go there on your own.
I think it's next to impossible to go there alone, you know, for all of us, right? I mean, ultimately we need to, but we need the support and guidance to get there. It's kind of like this, almost like this oxymoron, right? We need the support and guidance so we can get there, but it's still our own. Nobody can do it for us. It's our own journey, right? We can just have somebody, I think, who can help lead the way and essentially hold us as we go through it, our most difficult, challenging aspects to ourselves. And somebody who can, you know, just on a very practical sense, you know, in terms of goal setting and actions, like, who can hold us accountable, say, hey, did you do this, right?
Yes.
And that's important. But then it's if they don't follow through, for instance, well, why didn't we do that?
Right.
Let's find out. Well, what causes that? What causes that? What causes this procrastination? What causes the indecision? What causes the withdrawal in a relationship? What causes the addiction? I worked with a lot of people around addiction too, right? Drugs, alcohol, sex, work, you name it. What's underneath all this? What's underneath the depression? What's underneath the anxiety? And so that's why I think the long-term relationship is the most beneficial.
Yeah.
Do you ever get scared going so deep?
What's that?
Do you ever get scared going so deep with people?
I don't. I used to be honest, and I think for two reasons. So in the past, I used to be not scared of going deep, but scared of, I used to worry that I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, or stir up things that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. But I guess two things, as I've studied more and more and learned more about trauma and things like this, it's given me the tools that I need to take people there and to support them properly. But more than, I don't just mean trauma, but I mean, like, we don't have to actually have experienced trauma in our life to have traumatic memories, feelings, etc. Right? We all experience that to some degree. It could be a very innocent situation. We create this deep belief that maybe I'm unloved, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
Things like this, right? So it was learning the skills and the tools, and like I say, it's an ongoing journey because I always like to acquire new and say, wow, okay, this can work even better, right? But it's also, more importantly, almost, was going through those a lot. And again, there's lots more to go. I'm not saying I'm arrived somewhere, but going through those very deep levels myself, so that I felt comfortable holding the space for somebody. Right. So if they're breaking down, if they're pissed off at me, like if I've triggered some anger in them for some reason, you know, aside from, you know, maybe I made a mistake, that's different. I'll own that, correct that. But it's more, okay, what was triggered and why, right? And what do we do with it? And instead of trying to necessarily change it right off the bat, we learn how to just feel what's going on. So most people will either oppress or suppress those emotions, right? Or they'll get stuck in them. Neither one's true. Right? So, sorry, I've got these phone going off here.
You're a wanted man.
It seems that way. So learning how to really actually just process these emotions properly and navigate and actually kind of reframe the unconscious narratives we have about why we're feeling a certain way. Does that kind of answer the question? I kind of, again, went off track a little bit.
No, it's true. I mean, we all create our own stories around things,
Yes.
and live our lives based on those stories, right?
We do, absolutely. One thing I find that's really cool about the stories and the beliefs that underlie the stories is that when you really, really look at any belief, what is it? It's a belief, so it means it's malleable. In other words, if we believe something, somebody else might believe something else about it, right? So if we believe something about ourselves that maybe it isn't true, maybe we could just have a look at it and learn it. And I don't mean on an intellectual level, because it doesn't work. Positive thinking doesn't work. Visualization doesn't work. They're important tools, but we have to go a lot deeper than that if we want real change. Because if positive thinking worked, everybody would be successful and fulfilled right now. We all know about that, right? So it's like, how do we go deeper to really change these beliefs and reframe them? And that's what the whole relationship is.
I like that a lot. Like I said, people really need to pay attention. If you're listening to this show and hearing what he's saying, like, he is like this all the time. He's very insightful. He's got a lot of experience, and he's very good at what he does. So again, I'm really, really glad that you hopped on. I'm glad we can make it work out, because I know we're coming up to the top of the hour and the end of our time. Was there anything you got new coming up or wanted to throw out there for your audience?
Yeah, well, a couple things. I actually want to, first and foremost, I want to leave you guys with probably, even if you never work with a coach, me or somebody else, anybody, I want to leave you with something that can help create a lot of change if you apply it consistently on a daily basis. Something very, very simple, and then I'll tell you what I have coming up. It's 3 questions that I use, and there's so many. Again, it's not just the questions; it's processes. It's like I go again, very emotional processes. There'll be educational days. There'll be exploratory days. There'll be a lot of what's called self-inquiry. So directing people deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's what these three questions I want to leave you with are before I kind of share that. Number one, if you're struggling with, so this is if you're struggling with something, it could be indecision, it could be anxiety, especially so much anxiety and stress and overwhelm out there right now, COVID related, depression. And again, this isn't a cure, but this can help create some space from what you're feeling, in order to just feel it versus staying stuck in it, right? So the first question that I would leave everybody with is, what am I focused on right now? Meaning, am I focused on something within my control or outside my control? Am I focused on the past? Am I focused on the future and what if? Am I focused on the 1,001 things I have to do and not really doing, fully engaged with anything? So what am I focused on that's, contributing to this anxiety, let's say? What am I focused on? What meaning am I creating for myself in this situation? Right. So maybe we're focused on, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And the meaning underneath that maybe is, I can't do it. Well, of course we're going to feel anxious. Right. And then the third question would be, what paths of action are available to me right now? Okay, well, I could go meditate. I could make this phone call. I could hire a coach. I could do it, all those 3 things. Like go for a walk, whatever. Right. And if we constantly ask those 3, and there's so many versions of them that I use with clients, but if we ask those 3, I find it can create like I said, some distance between the story and ourselves, in a sense that we can feel the anxiety, but it doesn't overtake us anymore, right? And then we can actually get ourselves to maybe to take baby steps, if that's all it is, but we can take some steps forward. So those 3 questions. But in answer to your question, to wrap up, because I tend to talk too much, right now, so I've got a lot of personal projects on the go. So books I'm writing, art pieces I'm completing, things like that. But in terms of coaching, right now I'm working primarily with individuals. That's really where I like to specialize, is the one-on-one work. Sometimes groups if that comes up. But right now I've got about 5 spots available. Probably not more than that. but 5 spots that I would love to fill with the right people, if anybody's looking. And basically, there's people that are looking, either they know what they want, but they don't know how to get there, and or they're really ready for something deeper, some big transformation. Working on the anxiety, working on the depression, working on this, self-loathing or the unworthiness. Even if you're very confident, like I was, right? Whatever it is. So looking for big transformation. And basically, if you're watching this show, I don't really, well, I hardly ever give discounts, only when I feel really appreciative of somebody for something, like a lot of referrals, let's say. But because that's how I feel about Marquise and this show and being on here, is I'd like to offer anybody that does want to work with me. Number one, there's no catch. You book what's called discovery session. It's free. If we look at what you want, what's in the way maybe, and a step or two to create change, whether it's a process, whether it's an action, whatever. We look to see if it's a fit. So number one, I'd love to offer that to everybody here if you're looking. But number two, if you ended up wanting to work with me, I would give you 25% off the regular coaching fees. And I don't really do that, like I say, except for the odd situation. I don't want it to sound silly because that's not what I'm about at all. It's more if we resonate, if it resonates to work with me, together, whatever, I'd love to support you. That's really what it comes down to.
That's a sweet gift.
Yeah, listeners.
An amazing way for people to approach coaching that never have tried it before, for example.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, awesome. And I will definitely make sure to put that in the description, of the show notes. And for those of you listening that want to get a hold of us, that is the coaching show, you can contact us at thisiscoachingshow@gmail.com. Any information that you share with us is confidential unless you say we can share it. And do you have a website, Shawn?
I do. It's I'm going to be honest, I'm redoing it. It's under construction right now, a whole new website, but you can still get some basic ideas of testimonials, etc., packages, how to get a hold of me. So it's Shawn, SHAWN, at ShawnKCarpenter.com.
Too easy. And I'll make sure that's in the show notes as well.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I think it's time for us to go ahead and sign off, let you get back to your busy day.
Absolutely.
Servicing those clients the way you do. Ladies, do you guys have anything to add before we go?
I just want everybody listening in to know I love you. That's it.
Awesome. Monica, got anything?
Really nice to meet you, Shawn. And yeah, wonderful discussion about coaching. Thanks.
Likewise. I just want to say I really, really appreciate all three of you having me on here and asking questions.
We're happy to have you.
Yes. Thank you so much for jumping on.
Yes.
Again, we're going to have to do this again.
Good. I hope
have
so.
Some really, really good conversations in the future about random topics. But until then, until the next time, guys, thank you for everything.
Awesome, guys.
Peace.
Thank you so much.